You do not feel like you fit in anymore because your brain stopped lying to you at the same speed as everyone else. And that sounds dramatic, but think about it for a second. When you walk into certain rooms now, it is not that people changed overnight. It is that your internal model of what is going on got more accurate, and accuracy is socially expensive. Quick thing before I go further. We are building toward our next subscriber milestone, and your subscription genuinely helps us reach more people who want psychology that is actually useful. And if this hits a nerve, tap like too, because it tells the algorithm this is worth surfacing. Now let me frame what we are actually talking about. Feeling like you do not fit in is usually treated as a confidence problem or a social skills problem, but in a lot of cases it is neither. It is a calibration problem. Your mind is recalibrating what is safe, what is true, what is worth pretending, and what kind of people you can actually build a life around. And when your calibration changes, the social world that used to feel effortless can start to feel thin, scripted, slightly fake, like you can predict the next sentence before it comes out of someone's mouth. If you have felt that, you are not imagining it. There are real psychological mechanisms that produce that exact sensation, and most people never learn them because they are inconvenient. They force you to admit that belonging is not just connection, it is coordination. It is a shared set of illusions that let a group move as one. Here is what is actually happening, and I am going to start with the least flattering part. One reason you stop fitting in is that you have become harder to socially compress. Every group, whether it is a friend circle, a workplace, or a family system, runs on compression. It reduces complicated humans into simple labels so it can predict them. The funny one, the responsible one, the mess, the therapist friend, the ambitious one, the one who always says yes. When you were younger, you probably let people compress you because it was efficient. You got belonging in exchange for being legible. But then you change. You learn. You heal. You get tired. You develop boundaries. You gain nuance. And now, when the group tries to compress you into the old file name, it does not load. They say you have changed, like it is an accusation. What they mean is, you no longer fit the shortcut we use to process you. Notice the pattern here. People do not reject you because you are worse. They reject you because you are harder to predict. There is research adjacent to this in social cognition and person perception. Humans are cognitive misers. We rely on schemas because tracking the full complexity of each person is expensive. A group is basically a shared prediction machine. When you become less predictable, you create prediction error. And prediction error creates discomfort. Not because you are wrong, but because you are computationally costly. Let me show you what I mean in real life. You stop laughing at jokes you used to laugh at. You stop participating in small humiliations disguised as bonding. You start asking, why do we do this? And suddenly you are too serious. Or you stop oversharing, and suddenly you are cold. Or you start succeeding, and suddenly you are full of yourself. These are not objective evaluations. They are attempts to compress you back into a manageable shape. And if you have ever wondered why the rejection feels weirdly impersonal, like they are arguing with a version of you that no longer exists, that is why. They are not relating to you. They are relating to a cached copy. Stay with me, because the next layer is where it gets uncomfortable. Sometimes the reason you do not fit is not that you outgrew them. It is that you stopped participating in the group's emotional economy. Most groups have an invisible economy where emotions are the currency, not money, not status. Emotional transactions. Some groups are built on mutual elevation. Other groups are built on mutual regulation, meaning, and the point of the group is to keep everyone at a certain emotional set point. If someone gets too happy, you tease them back down. If someone gets too ambitious, you call them unrealistic. If someone gets too honest, you call them dramatic. The group does this to preserve stability. In psychology, there is a concept called emotional homeostasis, and in family systems theory, you will hear about the identified patient, the person who carries the symptoms for the system. But you can zoom that out. Friend groups do it too. Work cultures do it too. Entire communities do it too. The group maintains emotional balance by subtly punishing deviation. So when you start growing, or grieving, or getting sober, or becoming more self-respecting, you break the old emotional exchange rate. You stop paying into the shared mood. You stop doing the ritual complaints. You stop bonding through gossip. You stop agreeing that everything is pointless. You stop performing that specific kind of misery that signals membership. And now you feel like an alien, not because you are above anyone, but because you are no longer fluent in the group's emotional language. Here is the mechanism behind this. Belonging is often contingent on emotional predictability, not moral goodness. Groups reward the person who helps the group feel stable. If your presence destabilizes the familiar emotional rhythm, even in a positive direction, people experience it as a threat. This is why you can be kinder than ever and still feel less welcome. Kindness does not always stabilize a system. Sometimes it exposes it. Now here is where it gets interesting. There is a more hidden reason you stop fitting in, and it has nothing to do with your personality. It has to do with your nervous system. As you mature, your threat detection system can become more precise. A lot of people assume that anxiety makes you more sensitive to threat and healing makes you less sensitive. But what I have observed is different. Early on, when you are anxious or insecure, your threat detection can be loud but inaccurate. It flags everything. You overthink harmless pauses. You interpret neutral faces as rejection. You chase belonging to calm the noise. But as you heal, the volume can go down while the precision goes up. You stop panicking about imaginary rejection and you start noticing real misalignment, subtle contempt, status games, people who only tolerate you when you are useful, conversations that are not conversations, just mutual positioning. And the reason this makes you feel like you do not fit is simple. You can no longer unsee it. It is like upgrading a camera. The old version was grainy, so everyone looked fine. The new version is high resolution, and now you can see the cracks in the set, the smile that does not reach the eyes, the compliment that is actually a dominance move, the constant steering of the conversation back to their need for attention. Think about this for a second. When you were younger, you might have felt like you fit in because you were not tracking the same variables. You were tracking, do they include me? Now you are tracking, do they respect me? Do they tell the truth? Do they take responsibility for their impact? Do they have the capacity for repair? That is a completely different game. And when you switch games, you stop matching most players. This is also why the loneliness feels so strange. It is not a lack of people. It is a lack of coherence. You can be surrounded and still feel socially malnourished because the interactions do not metabolize into anything. Now I want to hit a point that almost nobody talks about because it sounds cynical, but it will explain a lot of your confusion. A significant part of fitting in is agreeing on what not to notice. Every group has a shared attentional blind spot, something obvious that everyone silently agrees to treat as normal. The boss who is incompetent, the friend who is cruel but just joking, the family member everyone protects at everyone else's expense, the way the group drinks too much or spends too much, in or hates themselves too casually. Fitting in often means participating in that blindness. And when you stop participating, you become a problem. Not because you are wrong, but because you are breaking the social spell. You are forcing attention onto something the group survives by ignoring. There is a concept in social psychology called pluralistic ignorance. It is when everyone privately disagrees or feels uncomfortable, but everyone assumes everyone else is fine with it, so they all act fine with it. It creates a fake consensus, a kind of social hallucination. Now watch what happens when you are the first person to stop acting. You do not laugh. You do not play along. You do not nod at the lie. You ask one sincere question, and suddenly people react to you like you attacked them. That reaction is not about your question. It is about the panic of waking up. You just threatened the hallucination that keeps the group intact. If you have ever felt like, I did not even say anything that harsh, why are they so defensive? This is why. You violated the agreement of selective attention. Okay. Midway point, and I want to flip everything I just said, because if you only hear the first half, you will walk away with the wrong story. Sometimes you do not fit in because you are seeing more truth, and sometimes you do not fit in because you are carrying unprocessed identity debt. Identity debt is what builds up when you have spent years adapting to belong. You say yes when you mean no, you laugh when you feel hurt, you shapeshift, you become whoever the room rewards, and in the short term it works. You get inclusion. But the brain keeps receipts. Every time you betray your own signals to keep a connection, your nervous system learns a rule. Closeness requires self-erasure. That rule becomes implicit memory, not a thought, a reflex. So later, when you enter a new group that is actually healthy, you might still feel like you do not fit, because your body expects the old price of admission. You walk into a calm, direct, emotionally mature environment and it feels wrong, too quiet, too clean, like you are waiting for the hidden punishment. You might even try to recreate the old dynamics without realizing it, because chaos is familiar and familiarity feels like safety, even when it is not. This is nuanced but important. Not fitting in is sometimes growth, and sometimes it is withdrawal because belonging used to be earned through performance. So how do you tell the difference? You look at what part of you is uncomfortable. If the uncomfortable part is your conscience, your standards, your sense of self-respect, then the discomfort is information. It is telling you the group requires blindness or self-betrayal. If the uncomfortable part is your nervous system expecting danger in a safe room, then the discomfort is inertia. It is old conditioning trying to protect you from an environment that does not run on the rules you learned. And there is one more layer that ties this together, and it explains why this feeling often shows up after a big life change. Your belonging instincts are designed for small tribes, but you are living inside a network. In a tribe, fitting in was about survival. Your brain evolved to treat exclusion as physical danger. But the modern social world is not one tribe. It is overlapping networks. Work, online spaces, subcultures, group chats, professional circles. Each network has different norms, and the friction between them creates identity strain. Here is the mechanism. When you move between many networks, you stop fully internalizing any single set of norms. You become a translator. You see the arbitrariness of each group's rules. And once you see that rules are arbitrary, it becomes harder to feel emotionally loyal to them. It is like learning how magic tricks work. The show is less immersive. This is why a lot of smart people, reflective people, people who read and think and travel between worlds, start feeling like they do not fit. Not because they are superior, because they are less spellbound. Now let me synthesize this into a model you can actually use, because awareness without a framework just becomes rumination. Here is the unified theory. Fitting in is not a trait you have. It is a contract between your identity and a group's operating system. And that contract has 3 clauses. Clause 1 is compression. The group needs a simple version of you that it can predict. Clause 2 is emotional homeostasis. The group needs you to help regulate its mood and stability. Clause 3 is shared attention. The group needs you to agree on what will be noticed and what will be ignored. When you stop fitting in, at least one clause is being renegotiated. So instead of asking, "What is wrong with me?" ask 3 diagnostic questions. First, where am I being compressed into an outdated role? What label do people keep trying to stick on me, and what happens when I refuse it? Second, what emotional job did I used to do for this group? Was I the entertainer, the peacemaker, the one who absorbed tension, the one who stayed small so others felt big? And what happens now that I am not doing that job? Third, what is the shared blind spot here? What does everyone quietly agree not to name? And do I have the capacity and the desire to pay the social cost of naming it? Now here is the part that gives you power. Once you see belonging as a contract, you stop begging for it. You start negotiating it. Negotiation does not mean ultimatums. It means you choose environments where the clauses are compatible with who you are becoming. You choose people who can update their model of you. People who can tolerate emotional honesty without collapsing. People who can look at the obvious thing without punishing the person who points at it. And you also take responsibility for your side of the contract. If you have identity debt, you pay it down. You practice being consistent across rooms. You practice saying small truths early so you do not explode with big truths later. You train your nervous system to recognize safety that is not loud, because the goal is not to fit in everywhere. That is a child's goal. The adult goal is to fit where you do not have to shrink your perception to be accepted. So let me close by looping back to the first line. You do not feel like you fit in because your brain stopped lying at the same speed as everyone else. That is not automatically a tragedy. It is a signal. The question is not, how do I get that old belonging back? The question is, what did that belonging cost me, and am I finally unwilling to pay it? If this reframed something for you, tell me in the comments what clause broke first for you. Compression, emotional homeostasis, or the shared blind spot. And next time you walk into a room and feel that familiar disconnect, do not assume you are defective. Ask yourself a sharper question. What truth did I just become unable to ignore?